Bill Belichick and this marriage between him and the UNC Tar Heels is so interesting from a historic standpoint. And you guys know I love the history of all of these leagues. I love looking for the pockets or the rhythms or the patterns of how things have played out over time. And the Belichick thing has no equal. It has no peer. There is nothing close to this in NFL history where one of the greatest coaches of all time wants to coach again and doesn't have a job. Okay? All of the other guys were burnt out of where they were, and then their second job was, I don't want that, or just flat retired and said, that is it. The cavalry came, and now I ride off into the sunset. Never has there been a greatest coach in the NFL that couldn't get a job in the NFL, and he wanted it. And that has clearly happened to Bill Belichick, and that much is remarkable. Bill Belichick, according to Seth Wickersham, Diana Rossini, and others, had reached out over the course of the season to gauge interest in his services. He had called or had people call on behalf of him. Rossini reported, and she's been a guest here on Watch DA Live earlier in the season. She says that he actually reached out to the Jets personally. The Jets, who you know he hates with a flaming passion and cannot stand Woody Johnson, considering the shots he took at Woody earlier in the year. And even that, he would grovel and say, are you interested? The fact that he took this job means every single door in the NFL had closed on him and locked shut. Every single job. And that, my friends, has never happened. Vince Lombardi left the Packers, but after a year away, he said, I want back in. And Washington said, the job is yours. Now, he passed away shortly after that, but he had a job. Okay? When Tom Landry was pushed out of Dallas, that was it. He didn't want to come back. When Chuck Noll was done in Pittsburgh, he didn't try to come back. Bill Walsh did try to coach again at Stanford, but he didn't want back into the NFL. The grind was too much for Bill Walsh. His health situation was not good. He knew he needed something as he turned down the pressure. Don Shula pushed out in Miami, retired. That was it. Bill Parcells had a job as long as he wanted one in the NFL. Every time he stepped away, somebody else said, we'll give you a job. And he even became an administrator for the Miami Dolphins after he finished coaching. We have not had a situation where one of the great head coaches ever wants to coach, and the NFL says, no vacancy. Now, how does something like this happen? Something like this happens because he always, I think, reveled in being an antagonist. I think he liked being an outsider and probably had a little victimhood thing in there. How dare you come after me for Spygate? How dare you embarrass me over these things? You know what? I'm not going to play the game with you guys. I'm not playing. And it is underscored by the fact that when there were coaches' team photos over the course of the years, he didn't even show up for the coaches' fraternity. This wasn't kissing the boots of owners. He wouldn't show up to that. You know, and it's the goofy picture we make fun of every single year. He wouldn't even show up for that. I'm not playing your game. Now think about maybe you were antisocial in high school and you looked at the popular kids and said, I'm not one of you. So you know what? I'm not showing up to any of your graduation parties. Maybe this has been some part in your life where you worked in an office and saw there was a clique, the cool kids. You said, I'm not playing that game. Now they got the Christmas party going, or they're doing this thing for the holidays, or they're doing this team bonding. I'm not showing up to work. No way. Which is fine. It's not against the rules for Bill Belichick. But now that he has wanted to get back in, that knife is cut back the other way. That knife has cut him. He was, I don't need you, I don't need you, I don't need you. And now he needs somebody. I need somebody love. He's got nobody. And that's why he's at North Carolina. Do I think it works? Yeah, I think to a certain degree. I mean, if you ask me today, how many years over under Bill Belichick's in Chapel Hill? I'd say 4.5. That's the over under I would set. Right around there. 4 years, 5 years. He's 72. Okay. So if he coaches 5 years, he's 77 years old. It's hard to coach near 80. So I would say 4 or 5 years. And in those 4 or 5 years, do I think that they'll win 8 or 9 games? Yeah, I think they're an 8-4, 9-3 team. In 1 or 2 of those seasons, maybe they go into one of the last regular season games with a chance to win the ACC. And hell, they could play an ACC championship game and maybe even win an ACC championship. It's not like he's going to the SEC. All of that's on the table. He's not winning a national championship. Let's get real here. You're not going to walk into UNC and suddenly win a national championship, but you can get in the tournament. There's no doubt about that. SMU's in the tournament. Come on. Boise State's in the tournament. Arizona State's in the tournament. He can get there. Now, can he win enough games over the blue bloods of college football? Can you beat the Georgias and the Ohio States to get there? I don't think so. But I think it'll work to a certain degree. But in some ways, it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. Now, I mean, look, I've been a Patriots hater for a long time. This is going to be written on my tombstone forever. I mean, I went to battle against the Patriots for many years on the radio because for me, they sucked the joy out of winning. You know, I know there's a business side to all of this, and I realize that the way they approached it helped them win as much as they did. At the same time, I can't get past the fact that you have multiple cheating scandals, a coach who has been penalized and docked draft picks multiple times, a quarterback that has been suspended for breaking rules as well. You have a double homicide guy that's been on the roster, okay, and a significant contributor to the team. You have an alienation of all media that ever tried to cover you, including yours truly. I didn't take it personally, but, you know, I covered the Chiefs. I covered the Dolphins. I covered multiple teams around Boston that were not named the New England Patriots. And players had a certain level of joy, had a certain level of appreciation and gratitude, that not for the media, but for the opportunity. And for Belichick and the Patriots, they tried to strip away any of that identity, any of that joy. And it was the moment they won a Super Bowl, what was their calling card? No days off. Well, man, if the greatest achievement in your life, you can't enjoy for a day, no days off, what are we even really trying to accomplish here? So it's just a war. It's just a war to carry the most pelts, to have the most trophies. That I could never resonate with. So I didn't ever like the Patriots. And it became gluttonous towards the end, let's face it. At the same time, if one of the greatest coaches in NFL history can't get a job in the NFL, there's a problem there. And there were 7 openings last season. There's 3 now this year. There will probably be another 3, I would say, this offseason. You're telling me there's 13 front offices and owners and GMs that are too good for Bill Belichick? Come on. That's ridiculous. And I would imagine he became pickier, or he was pickier last year than he is this year. And I would imagine he was more willing to conform this year because he wanted a job in the NFL. If he's willing to call the Jets, which is the ex you hated for years and said, I can't stand him. He's a cheating, lying fool. You badmouthed him forever. You made fun of the people he was around. You made fun of his family or his new girlfriend. The fact that he would call the ex and say, hey, you up? You single? Means he was desperate and he would have conformed. And everybody said no. There's an element here that's sad. And I do believe in karma. And I do believe in mojo. And I do believe How you treat people is how they will treat you in some space in this universe. Belichick treated a lot of people poorly. And Belichick pushed a lot of people away. And the fact that at the end, the owner of the team, who, let's face it, could be a bit petty, could be a brat in Robert Kraft, could be insecure, the fact that that guy wanted to slam you in the documentary series, and the fact that the NFL said no vacancy, says what goes around comes around. And Bill Belichick's going to put on a smile and wear a cutoff at UNC, and everybody in Chapel Hill is going to say this is a wonderful win, but in some ways, this is a pretty sad ending. Bill Belichick's coaching a middle-of-the-road ACC team, and his grand accomplishment's going to be the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. There's something pretty sad there. Obviously, you talk to a lot of people in the league. It seemed like, there was going to be more of an appetite this offseason than last offseason to potentially hire Bill. Seemed like he might have been willing to conform. Reportedly, he reached out to the Jets personally, so maybe he was willing to take whatever was out there, and still he got shut out of the NFL. Why do you think everybody in the league said thanks but no thanks to Bill Belichick again this time around?
Well, I think it was a combination of a lot of factors. First of all, the Eagles' job was the most obvious, attractive job coming into the season that looked like it might open for him. There was already that kind of feeling out process, the Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, Bill Belichick coming out of the previous year. So it felt like if that was open, that could be his. That is, of course, not looking that way. But that expanding that to a bigger picture, I started getting calls about a week before this North Carolina news dropped that Belichick was not finding an appetite around the NFL for his services, similar to what we saw in the last cycle. It was almost unexpectedly so, looking at these teams, reaching out to these teams, that people had moved on. I do think, DA, I've seen different reporting about this. I do think Jacksonville would have been a situation for him if he went hard at it. So I'm interested in the fact that he went to North Carolina rather than sticking around and pursuing it more. You could tell, though, by the fact that he was calling the Jets with some urgency, that he didn't want to be left kind of sitting out with no chair in the game of musical chairs. So I think that's why he made this decision now. Like, he wanted to land somewhere first. It is a very strange decision from the standpoint of, if you talk to any NFL coach who's in college right now, largely they say, wow, it's a mess. There's no regulations. You saw Nick Saban, Belichick's friend and former colleague, get out because players are walking in saying, hey, give me $1 million more or I'm going to Georgia or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, great that it's a pipeline. Great that you're creating this NFL runway, but I don't think he even fully understands what he's walking into. And so why did he not get hired? Frankly, DA, I think he made too many enemies. Like, the fact that the Falcons leaked that he wasn't even in their top 3, and, you don't hire him. So what? Leaking that is and a screw you out the door. Or even the fact that this came out that he called the Jets. Why does that come out? Well, because he kicked them around for years and he stomped on people's graves, and they were the Patriots and they handled things a certain way and people accused him of cheating. And I think this is just some things coming back to him. And you and I both know, DA, very insular communities, these like coaching trees, right? It's like the circle of people that you trust. And then outside the tree, maybe people don't understand. Maybe you wouldn't hire someone because they wouldn't run things a certain way. I think people just view Bill Belichick too much as it's all his way or no way. And I don't think it's the right thing for these programs to do. I think a lot of NFL teams are very bad because they're being coached by guys who aren't ready for their jobs yet. But it's very clear that Bill Belichick was not wanted, not only last cycle, but even this cycle. I think a lot of us, including me, believed that Belichick was going to walk into this next hiring cycle with like his pick of 3 or 4 jobs. And once it became clear that it was maybe going to be Jacksonville or nothing, that's how he ends up a Tar Heel.
And it hurts him as well that all of his assistant coaches have failed spectacularly. And so, as you said, this insular coaching tree, had it looked like the genius of Bill Belichick was so obvious in other places around the NFL, you had to glom on to some of that genius. The fact that it kept failing everywhere else meant he didn't have allies in powerful places around the NFL. He didn't have a bunch of head coaches that were under him that said, look, he taught me this, he taught me that. GMs that had inspired. Nick Caserio, I guess, is the closest thing, but there's just not a lot of guys from the New England tree that are doing anything in the NFL of note right now. And so it hurt his credibility a lot.